All right, so get this. You've got news coming at you from every corner of Nigeria, right? Headlines from the Nation newspaper daily, Post Nigeria, even Al Jazeera's weighing in.
It's a lot to keep up with.
Yeah, it really is. So that's why we're here to do a deep dive today, going through all the stories and picking out the stuff you actually need to know.
We're talking elections, economic ups and downs, and of course, the security situations that just never seem to go away.
Exactly. So let's jump right in and head over to Ondo State. It's election season there, and things are getting pretty heated.
Heated. That might be an understatement. INC, the Independent National Electoral Commission, they're pulling out all the stops for this one.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Well, they've accredited a ridiculous number of observer organizations.
But how many are we talking?
111 to be exact.
Yeah.
With over 3,554 observers ready to monitor the election.
Wow, that's a lot of eyes on this election.
And that's not, they're also deploying over 22,000 police officers. It's like they're expecting a political earthquake or something.
Sounds intense.
It is. And to add more fuel to the fire, the PDP, the People's Democratic Party, they're already crying foul.
What are they saying?
They're demanding the removal of the resident electoral commissioner, claiming there's bias.
So they think the election might not be fair.
That's what they're claiming, but hold on a sec, because a civil society group is pushing back.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're defending the REC, saying he has integrity and everything.
So it's a bit of a standoff, then.
Exactly. It's a classic power struggle, and the stakes are really high. Think about it. A contested election could throw Ondo State into chaos. You could have protests, legal battles dragging on for months.
It could even affect the entire political landscape in Nigeria.
Absolutely.
And to make things even more interesting, there was a court case challenging the NNPP candidate's eligibility.
Oh, yeah, I read about that.
The court did dismiss it, but you have to wonder if all this drama will leave any doubts in voters' minds.
Oh, definitely. Even a dismissed court case can create suspicion.
Yeah.
You know, it can erode people's trust in the whole electoral process.
It's all about perception. Speaking of things that can have a big impact, can we talk about Trump's victory in the U.S. presidential election? Every Nigerian news outlet seems to be talking about it.
It's like it's sending shockwaves across the globe.
Yeah, it's like a ripple effect. Al Jazeera is reporting on how Nigerian migrants in the U.S. are feeling anxious about potential changes in immigration policies.
Makes sense.
And here in Nigeria, everyone's speculating about what it means for trade relations between our two countries.
It's like everyone's holding their breath, wondering what's going to happen next.
Yeah, definitely a lot of uncertainty right now. But let's shift gears for a moment and talk about something a little closer to home.
Sounds good.
The national power grid. Guess what? It's gone and collapsed again.
Ugh. Not again. This is getting ridiculous.
I know, right? Multiple sources are reporting another round of collapses, leaving millions of people in the dark.
It's almost comical at this point, but the consequences are definitely not funny.
No, they're not. Businesses are losing money, hospitals are struggling to function, people's daily lives are being disrupted.
It's a mess.
Some sources are blaming it on a lack of maintenance, while others are whispering about sabotage.
Who knows what the real cause is? But one thing's for sure. Nigeria's power sector needs some serious help.
Agreed. And speaking of needing help, Governor Soludo of Anambra State is stirring things up with his support for some of Tinubu's more controversial economic policies.
You mean the removal of petrol subsidies and the floating of the Naira?
Those are the ones. What do you make of all that?
Well, it's definitely a bold move. Removing those petrol subsidies could potentially mean less government spending and resources being used more efficiently.
That sounds good in theory.
It does, but there's a catch.
What's that?
It could also mean higher fuel prices for everyday Nigerians.
Yeah, that's going to hit some people hard.
It is. It could lead to a spike in the cost of living.
And what about the floating Naira? How's that supposed to work?
The idea is to let the market determine the value of the Naira instead of having a fixed exchange rate.
So no more government control.
Right? It could attract foreign investment and stabilize the currency over time, but in the short term, it could lead to some wild fluctuations in exchange rates.
So it's a bit of a gamble then.
It is. It could be a win for the economy in the long run, but there are some real risks in the short term.
Definitely a lot to consider. On a more positive note, a massive container vessel just arrived at the Lagos Port Complex.
The largest one to ever dock in Nigeria.
That's what I heard. It's a sign that Nigeria is becoming a big player in international shipping.
Which is great news for trade and economic growth.
Yeah.
You can think of it like a gateway to global markets, is opening up, bringing in more investment and creating opportunities for Nigerian businesses.
It's like a giant billboard saying, Nigeria is open for business.
Exactly.
And here's another positive sign. Budget, a civic organization that analyzes public finances, just named Akwa Ibom the most credit-worthy state in Nigeria.
That's impressive, especially with all the economic challenges facing other states.
What makes a state credit-worthy anyway?
Well, it means they have a good track record of managing their finances. They can borrow money at lower interest rates, which allows them to invest in things like infrastructure, attract businesses, and provide better services to their citizens.
So it's basically a sign of good governance and financial responsibility.
Exactly.
It's something we could definitely use more of in Nigeria. But now let's talk about a more serious topic, security. There are reports coming in about continued violence and instability in different parts of the country.
Sadly, it's become a recurring theme.
In Plateau State, gunmen killed 3 youths, highlighting the ongoing security challenges in that region.
It's a reminder that despite efforts from security forces, certain regions remain vulnerable to this kind of violence. It's a complex issue with roots in ethnic tensions, resource conflicts, and the presence of armed groups.
And it creates a climate of fear and insecurity, which obviously hinders development and disrupts the lives of everyday people.
Absolutely.
And then from Imo State, there's a story that's both shocking and concerning.
What happened?
A critic is demanding N$500 million from the state governor
500 million naira. What for?
to stop attacks in the region.
Wow, that's a dangerous precedent. It suggests that criminal elements are becoming bolder and more brazen in their demands.
It makes you question the effectiveness of security measures and whether people can trust those who are supposed to be protecting them.
It erodes trust in the government and its institutions.
It's like something out of a movie, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, this is the reality for many Nigerians who live in fear of these attacks.
It's a sad situation.
And while there have been reports of some military successes against terrorist groups, like 481 terrorists killed and 741 suspects arrested, a new terrorist group has popped up in the Northwest.
It seems like it's a never-ending battle.
It is. It's like trying to patch up a leaky boat while you're sailing through a storm.
A very fitting analogy.
So let's shift gears one last time and look at some of the social issues that are making headlines.
Right.
A secondary school student in Ogun State was allegedly beaten to death.
Oh, that's awful.
It's sparked outrage, and it's raising questions about school safety and accountability.
It's a tragedy, and it highlights the need for greater vigilance in our schools. They should be safe spaces for children to learn and grow, not places where they have to fear for their lives.
Absolutely. This case needs a thorough investigation, and those responsible need to be held accountable.
Agreed.
But amidst all this, there's a glimmer of hope. The first cohort of artisans trained through the TVET program is graduating soon.
That's fantastic news.
It's a government initiative focused on vocational training, and it's all about equipping young people with valuable skills for the workforce.
This is exactly what we need. It empowers individuals, gives them the tools to succeed, and ultimately strengthens our economy.
It's a win-win situation.
Definitely.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive, from elections and economic policies to security concerns and social issues.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. But don't worry, we're not done yet. We'll be back for part 2, where we'll dig even deeper into these stories and explore what they mean for you and the future of Nigeria.
See you then.
Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back to our deep dive.
Yeah, that was a lot to take in even for us. But we're not just here to summarize the news, right? We want to understand what it all means.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's about connecting the dots and seeing the bigger picture.
So looking back at everything we talked about, what kind of patterns are you seeing?
One thing that keeps popping up is this issue of trust, or rather the lack of it.
Yeah, it seems like it's everywhere you look. The PDP questioning the election officials in Ondo State, that crazy demand for 500 million naira to stop the attacks in Imo State.
Exactly. It's like nobody believes anyone anymore.
And what does that say about our system?
Well, think about it. When you have political parties constantly accusing each other of rigging elections, or individuals resorting to extortion to solve security problems, it doesn't exactly inspire confidence, does it?
It's like the foundation is crumbling.
Exactly. And then you've got the national grid collapsing over and over again.
It makes you wonder, is it incompetence or is there something more going on?
It's a tough question to answer without concrete evidence, but these repeated collapses definitely add to the suspicion that something's not right.
It's like a constant reminder that even the most basic things like electricity can't be relied upon.
And that breeds frustration, anger, and a deep mistrust in the people who are supposed to be providing these services.
It's a vicious cycle. And speaking of mistrust, those reports about a new terrorist group emerging in the Northwest.
It's a chilling reminder that the fight against terrorism is far from over.
It's going to take a lot more than military force to win this battle.
You're absolutely right. We need to go beyond just fighting the symptoms.
We need to address the root causes.
The poverty, the lack of opportunities, the feeling of marginalization that drives people to extremism in the first place.
We need a holistic approach, one that tackles both the security threats and the social and economic conditions that create them.
Couldn't agree more.
All right, so let's talk about the economy for a bit. Governor Saludo supporting Tinubu's economic policies, removing the petrol subsidy and floating the Naira. That's a bold move.
It is. It's a high-risk, high-reward kind of situation.
What do you mean?
Well, on one hand, you have the potential for greater economic efficiency, attracting foreign investment, and maybe even long-term stability.
That sounds pretty good.
It does, but there's also the risk of increased hardship for everyday Nigerians in the short term.
Higher fuel prices, a fluctuating Naira. That's a lot for people to handle.
It is. It's a delicate balancing act, and
Yeah.
we'll have to wait and see how it plays out.
But there are some positive signs too, right? Like that massive container ship arriving in Lagos.
Oh, absolutely. That's a huge boost for Nigeria's international trade. It shows that we can compete on a global scale.
And Akwa Ibom being named the most creditworthy state, that's a big deal too.
It is. It's a testament to good financial management and responsible governance.
It shows that it's possible to do things right to create stability even in the midst of all the challenges.
And then there are the TVET graduates, all those skilled artisans entering the workforce. That's a real sign of progress.
It's about empowering people, giving them the tools they need to build a better future for themselves and for Nigeria.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Mm.
it seems like one theme keeps coming back to me: the need for a change in mindset.
What do you mean?
We need to shift from a culture of mistrust and suspicion to a culture of transparency, accountability, and collaboration.
I like that. But how do we do that? It seems like a huge task.
It is, but it starts with each and every one of us. We need to start demanding more from our leaders, holding them accountable for their actions.
We need to engage in constructive dialogue and work together to find solutions.
Because without that foundation of trust, everything else falls apart. Whether it's politics, security, or the economy, trust is the glue that holds it all together.
And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into Nigerian news.
We've covered so much ground, haven't we?
We really have, from the drama of elections to the anxieties around economic policies and the stark realities of security challenges.
But we've also seen those glimmers of hope, those signs that things can get better.
The arrival of that massive container ship, Akwa Ibom's strong financial standing, those TVET graduates ready to hit the ground running.
It's a mixed bag, for sure. But as we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's important to remember that these stories aren't just headlines.
They represent real challenges and opportunities facing everyday Nigerians.
And they raise some pretty important questions for us all.
Questions that go beyond the news cycle and make us think about the kind of Nigeria we want to build for the future.
How do we restore faith in our institutions, for example?
How do we hold our leaders accountable, not just with words, but with actions?
And how do we, the everyday people, contribute to creating a more secure and prosperous future?
These are big questions, and sometimes it can feel overwhelming, right?
It can. Like we're drowning in a sea of problems that seem impossible to solve.
But here's the thing. We're not powerless. We all have a role to play.
Every single one of us can make a difference.
Even small actions can have a ripple effect.
Think about it: engaging in thoughtful discussions, refusing to be silenced, holding our elected officials accountable.
Supporting initiatives that empower communities standing up for justice. Even just showing kindness to your neighbor.
These are the building blocks of a better society.
It might sound cliché, but even small acts of courage can inspire others to take action.
They can help restore that belief that change is possible.
So as we come to the end of our deep dive, I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
Out of all the stories we've discussed today, which one resonated with you the most?
Which one sparked that fire in your belly, that desire to make a difference?
Hold on to that feeling. Let it guide your actions, because the future of Nigeria isn't set in stone.
It's being shaped right now by the choices we make every single day.
That's a powerful thought.
It is. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll be back next week with a fresh batch of news, ready to unpack the insights and empower you with knowledge.
Until then, keep asking those tough questions, keep learning, and keep striving for a brighter tomorrow.
See you next time.